Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we'll be exploring a world that's often hidden in plain sight, the world of orchids. You know those elegant flowers you might see in a shop or maybe even have at home? Well, get ready to discover there's a whole lot more to them than just a pretty face.
Absolutely. Orchids are a huge family of flowering plants.
Really huge.
We're talking over 20,000 species.
Wow. And are they found all over?
Almost everywhere on Earth, actually, except for true deserts and the poles.
That's incredible. So we're talking about a truly global family of plants. I think a lot of people think of orchids as just exotic hothouse flowers.
Right.
But they've actually adapted to survive in some pretty diverse and challenging habitats, right?
Yeah. Rainforests, mountains. Some cling to trees, others grow on rocks, and some even live underground.
Okay, so clinging to trees, that would make some epiphytes.
You got it. They're not parasites, though.
Oh, right. I think a lot of people get that confused.
Yeah, they're not stealing nutrients or anything. They just use other plants, like trees, as a way to reach the sunlight.
Clever. And the ones that grow on rocks, those are called lithophytes.
Yes. Lithophytes often live in really harsh environments, very exposed.
So orchids have these really unique strategies to access sunlight and nutrients in environments where most other plants couldn't survive. I wonder how their roots have adapted to these different lifestyles.
That's a great question. Orchid roots, especially those of epiphytic species, have evolved some pretty amazing features.
Like what?
Well, for one, they have this specialized spongy layer that covers the roots. It's called the velamen.
Velamen, okay. What does it do?
It acts kind of like a built-in water bottle and sunblock all in one.
Wow, that's really cool. So the velamen helps protect the roots and absorb water, but how does it act as a sunblock?
The velamen is actually transparent when it's wet.
Oh, interesting.
So it allows sunlight to reach the green photosynthetic tissues inside the roots, but then when it dries out, it becomes opaque.
So it protects the roots from the intense sunlight.
Exactly.
Hold on, are you saying that orchid roots can actually photosynthesize?
Yep. It's a remarkable adaptation. It lets epiphytic orchids maximize their energy production even when the roots are exposed.
That's mind-blowing. I always thought photosynthesis only happened in the leaves. This is already so much more than I knew about orchids, and we haven't even gotten to the flowers.
Of course, the flowers are what most people think of when they think orchids. They are incredibly diverse and beautiful, but it's not just about looks.
Right.
Their beauty has a purpose. It's all about attracting pollinators.
So the shape, the color, the fragrance of orchid flowers, it's all part of their strategy to attract pollinators.
Exactly. Orchids have incredibly specific relationships with their pollinators, and their flowers are designed to appeal to their target audience, whether it's a bee, a butterfly, a moth, a bird, or even a bat.
It's amazing how specialized it is. I remember hearing that some orchids even mimic the appearance and scent of female insects to trick males into pollinating them. Is that true?
Yeah, it's called pseudocopulation, and it's a really clever strategy.
Clever is an understatement. The male insect thinks the flower is a female and tries to mate with it, but in the process picks up pollen.
And then carries it to another flower, facilitating pollination without even knowing it.
Okay, that is a sneaky way to guarantee pollination. Now let's talk about the seeds. Orchid seeds are incredibly tiny, right?
They are, like dust particles. An orchid can produce thousands, even millions of these dust-like seeds per fruit.
Wow, millions.
And they're designed for wind dispersal, so imagine a cloud of microscopic orchid seeds just floating through the air.
It's an amazing image. But if the seeds are that tiny, how do they have enough resources to germinate and grow into a new plant?
That's where things get really interesting. Orchid seeds actually lack endosperm, the food reserve that's found in most seeds. So to survive, they've developed a remarkable partnership with mycorrhizal fungi.
So the fungi provide the seeds with the nutrients.
Exactly. It penetrates the orchid seed and provides it with the nutrients it needs to germinate.
So it's like a symbiotic relationship, right? The orchid gets food from the fungus, and the fungus probably gets something in return.
Precisely. The fungus benefits from the sugars produced by the orchid during photosynthesis. It's a mutually beneficial relationship that's crucial for many orchid species.
This is all just blowing my mind. Orchids have all these incredible strategies to survive in all these challenging environments. From their specialized roots to their partnerships with fungi, it's amazing.
And we haven't even touched on one of their most fascinating adaptations,
Yeah.
their ability to thrive in water-scarce environments like the tops of trees.
How do they do that?
Thanks to a special type of photosynthesis called crassulation acid metabolism, or CAM.
CAM photosynthesis. Okay, I've heard of it, but can you explain how it works?
Sure, so most plants open their stomata, those tiny pores on the leaves, during the day to take in carbon dioxide.
Right, for photosynthesis.
Exactly. But that also leads to water loss through transpiration, especially in hot and dry environments.
That makes sense. So how do orchids get around that?
Orchids with CAM photosynthesis have this neat trick. They open their stomata at night when it's cooler and more humid.
To absorb the carbon dioxide.
Exactly. And then they store it in a special form until daytime when they can use it for photosynthesis without opening their stomata and losing water.
That's brilliant. It's like they figured out how to breathe at night to conserve water during the day. It's almost like a superpower.
Exactly. CAM photosynthesis allows orchids to thrive in places that would be impossible for most other plants, making them masters of adaptation.
This is all incredibly fascinating. I had no idea there was so much more to orchids than just their beautiful flowers.
And this is just the beginning. Orchids are a treasure trove of evolutionary wonders. Welcome back to the deep dive. Ready to continue exploring the amazing world of orchids.
Absolutely. I'm still thinking about all the incredible adaptations we talked about. From their specialized roots and symbiotic relationships with fungi to CAM photosynthesis, it's clear that orchids have evolved some remarkable survival strategies to thrive in all sorts of challenging environments.
They certainly have. And speaking of remarkable strategies, let's delve a little deeper into the fascinating world of orchid reproduction.
Okay.
We touched on their unique pollination methods earlier, but there's so much more to uncover.
I'm all ears. We talked about pseudocopulation, where some orchids trick insects into pollinating them by mimicking female insects, which was just wild. But I'm curious about the bigger picture. What makes orchid reproduction so unique compared to other flowering plants?
Well, for one thing, orchids have evolved this astonishing diversity of pollination mechanisms.
In what ways?
While some offer sweet nectar rewards to attract pollinators, others rely on intricate traps, deceptive visuals, or even intoxicating scents to lure their unsuspecting partners.
Oh wow, so it's like each orchid species has developed its own unique way to seduce its pollinator.
Exactly.
What I find fascinating is that many orchids rely on a single species of insect for pollination. Why is that?
That's a great question. It all boils down to efficiency and specialization. By relying on a single pollinator, orchids can increase the chances of successful cross-pollination. It's like having a dedicated postal service that delivers your mail directly to the right address.
Okay, I get it.
If you send your letters with a random carrier, there's a higher chance they'll get lost or delivered to the wrong place.
That's a great analogy. So orchids have evolved these highly specific relationships with their pollinators to make sure that their precious pollen reaches other orchids of the same species. That's a brilliant strategy to maximize their reproductive success.
Exactly, and this coevolutionary dance between orchids and their pollinators has resulted in the incredible diversity of shapes, colors, and fragrances we see in orchid flowers today. Each flower is a masterpiece of adaptation, fine-tuned over millions of years to attract its specific pollinator.
Makes you wonder how these relationships evolved in the first place. Did the orchids adapt to the insects, or did the insects adapt to the orchids? Or was it a bit of both?
That's a great question, and one of the most fascinating questions in evolutionary biology. It was likely a combination of both. As orchids evolved new floral traits, insects with preferences for those traits were more successful in pollinating them. And that, in turn, would have driven further specialization in both the orchids and the insects, leading to the intricate relationships we see today.
It's a beautiful example of how interconnectedness and coevolution have shaped the diversity of life on Earth. I'm really starting to see orchids in a whole new light. They're not just beautiful flowers. They're complex and fascinating organisms with these intricate relationships with their environment.
You're absolutely right. And speaking of intricate relationships, remember those tiny orchid seeds we talked about? The ones that rely on a symbiotic partnership with mycorrhizal fungi for germination?
Yes, that was another mind-blowing revelation. It's amazing how these tiny seeds, which are practically dust particles, team up with fungi to survive and grow.
It really is a testament to the power of cooperation in nature. These mycorrhizal fungi are essential for many orchid species, especially those that grow in nutrient-poor environments like the forest floor or the canopies of trees. The fungi provide the seeds with the essential nutrients they need to germinate and establish themselves.
So it's a mutually beneficial relationship where the orchid gets food and nutrients from the fungus, And the fungus gets something in return, right?
Exactly. The fungus benefits from the sugars produced by the orchid during photosynthesis. It's a classic example of symbiosis, where two different organisms work together for mutual benefit. And this partnership really highlights just how interconnected life is on Earth.
It's a beautiful reminder that we're all part of a larger web of life, and that even the smallest organisms play important roles in maintaining the balance of ecosystems.
Absolutely. And this interconnectedness is especially important for orchids, which rely on a delicate balance of factors for their survival. From their specific pollinators to their symbiotic fungi partners, orchids are intricately linked to their environment.
I'm really starting to appreciate the complexity of orchids more and more with every detail we uncover. There's so much more than just pretty faces. They're remarkable survivors with fascinating adaptations that allow them to thrive in all sorts of challenging environments.
You're spot on. Orchids are a testament to the ingenuity and resilience of nature. They've evolved over millions of years to conquer a wide range of habitats, from the steamy rainforests to the arid deserts. And their story is still unfolding as scientists continue to uncover new secrets about their biology and evolution.
It makes you wonder what other mysteries lie hidden within the world of orchids, just waiting to be discovered.
There are undoubtedly many more surprises waiting to be unearthed. Orchids are a constant source of wonder and inspiration for scientists and nature enthusiasts alike.
I'm eager to dive even deeper into their world and explore their evolutionary journey. What can you tell us about how orchids have evolved over millions of years to become such a diverse and successful group of plants?
That's a fascinating question. Orchids have an incredible evolutionary story marked by periods of rapid diversification and adaptation. Their journey through time is like a grand adventure, filled with twists, turns, and remarkable transformations. Are you ready to travel back in time and explore the origins of these botanical wonders?
Absolutely. Let's embark on this evolutionary adventure and unravel the mysteries of orchid evolution. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've uncovered so much about orchids already. Their incredible adaptations, their symbiotic relationships, and those wild pollination strategies. It's amazing how they've evolved to thrive in so many different environments. But now I'm really curious about their evolutionary journey. Where did orchids come from? And how did they become so diverse and successful?
That's a great question. Orchids have a really long and fascinating evolutionary history. We're talking millions of years. It's a story of adaptation, innovation, and maybe even a little bit of botanical drama.
Okay, I'm hooked already.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about the early ancestors of orchids? What did they look like, and where did they live?
Well, based on fossil evidence and genetic studies, scientists believe that orchids originated around 100 million years ago.
Wow, so back in the time of dinosaurs.
Exactly. And their early ancestors were probably terrestrial plants.
Meaning they grew on the ground.
Yeah, and they likely lived in tropical or subtropical forests.
So orchids have been around for a really long time. I wonder, what were their flowers like? Were they as elaborate and specialized as the orchids we see today?
It's hard to say for sure because fossilized flowers are pretty rare, but it's likely that the flowers of early orchids were simpler and less specialized than their modern relatives.
I see, so they evolved over time.
Right, over millions of years, orchids evolved more complex and diverse floral structures, driven by their coevolution with pollinators and their adaptation to different environments.
So the incredible diversity of orchid flowers we see today is the result of millions of years of evolution. It's amazing how they've developed such intricate relationships with their pollinators, attracting them with everything from sweet nectar to deceptive traps and even intoxicating scents.
It really shows the power of natural selection. Orchids that were better at attracting pollinators were more successful at reproducing, passing on their genes to future generations, and over time this led to the evolution of the specialized and diverse floral structures we see today.
It makes sense. I'm starting to see how orchids have become such masters of adaptation. They've evolved these intricate relationships with their pollinators, they've developed symbiotic partnerships with fungi, and they've even mastered CAM photosynthesis to thrive in water-scarce environments. It seems like they found a way to thrive in almost every corner of the planet.
You're absolutely right. Orchids have colonized a remarkable range of habitats, from lush rainforests to high mountains and even arid deserts. And their success is all thanks to their incredible adaptability and their, well, willingness to embrace innovation.
Let's talk about that innovation. What are some of the key evolutionary innovations that have allowed orchids to become so successful?
One of the most significant innovations was the development of their highly specialized pollination mechanisms. By evolving those specific relationships with their pollinators, Orchids could increase the efficiency of cross-pollination, and that's essential for maintaining genetic diversity and ensuring the survival of a species.
We talked about how some orchids mimic female insects to trick males into pollinating them. That's such a clever strategy.
It is, and it's just one example of the many ways orchids have evolved to, let's say, manipulate their pollinators. Some orchids have developed intricate traps that force insects to navigate through their flowers in a specific way, making sure they pick up pollen. Others have evolved those long, narrow floral tubes that can only be accessed by insects with long tongues, like moths or butterflies.
It's fascinating how orchids have turned the tables on their pollinators, using seduction, deception, even a bit of force to make sure they reproduce.
It's a real botanical battle of wits, played out over millions of years, and the result is this incredible diversity of orchid flowers we see today.
I'm also really curious about the evolution of their symbiotic relationships with fungi. How did that partnership come about? And how has it contributed to the success of orchids?
That symbiotic relationship between orchids and mycorrhizal fungi is another key innovation in their evolutionary history. This partnership allows orchid seeds, which are so tiny and lack their own food reserves, to germinate and establish themselves. The fungi provide the seeds with essential nutrients, while the orchids, once they're established, provide the fungi with sugars produced through photosynthesis.
So it's a win-win situation, a mutually beneficial relationship that allows both partners to thrive. It seems like these partnerships and adaptations are really what have enabled orchids to conquer such a wide range of habitats.
Exactly. And the story of orchid evolution isn't over yet. As scientists continue to study these fascinating plants, they're uncovering new secrets about their origins, their adaptations, and their relationships with other organisms.
Well, I'm definitely feeling inspired to learn more about orchids. I've always appreciated their beauty, but now I have a whole new level of respect for their resilience, their ingenuity, and their incredible evolutionary journey. Thanks for taking us on this deep dive into the world of orchids. I'm leaving with a newfound appreciation for these botanical wonders.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, the next time you come across an orchid, take a moment to really appreciate its beauty, its complexity, and its incredible evolutionary journey. These plants are a testament to the wonders of nature, and they deserve our admiration and protection.